In this day and age of video games where they feel more disposable than they ever have, largely due to poor conditions upon release, atrocious live service monetization schemes, and other contributing factors, a lot of games in 2023, at least from the larger publishers, feel rushed, incomplete, devoid of any real soul. They just feel more like products to produce all the money and then some. Which is why so many of us are resorting to playing older titles from generations ago, or just replaying games that are currently out, whether we still enjoy them or not. However, at the very least for myself personally, I have been consistently coming back to Tarkov time and time again, even when there's new games out that are solid and people are enjoying them. I guess Tarkov is just a comfort game for me at this point. It's hard to explain why Tarkov specifically is this game. I mean, I casually play all the Souls games every now and again because they're all still amazing. But in terms of online games that are currently out there, Tarkov is kinda still my number one. So I figured it made sense to take a little time and reflect on why this might be the case, and go over some of the larger aspects of BSG's game that make it not only so compelling, but also replayable, no matter what state it's currently in. Right off the bat, I think the 30-second loop is probably the primary reason why this game can hook players in for so long. We went over this in a previous video, but Tarkov's loop of fighting players, exploring maps, looting what's on them, and the sense of progression all culminate together to create an experience that is heavily replayable. And looking across other games and genres, there aren't many that have tried to replicate what Tarkov does, and even fewer that get it right. I don't want to call out any other games, maliciously, but the fact that the Psycho Frontier is going offline later this year is very unfortunate. But it also highlights why Tarkov is so successful. The replayability of Tarkov is something I personally haven't felt from an online game in years. BattleBit is another example of a fantastic game, but they are different games entirely. One is a massive multiplayer game focusing on huge conquests with tons of players and an almost pseudo-sandbox-like experience. And the other is an immersive FPS focused on weapon detail, survival, and ultimately telling stories through your raids. They can't really be lumped into the same category, but BattleBit is a great example of a small team wanting to create something fun, and they do exactly that. And that game is also highly replayable. But for something like Tarkov, it isn't just the gunplay that makes it fun. It isn't just the graphical fidelity or the weapons or the environments that get people hooked. It's also this weird, obtuse, almost alien of a video game as well. For anyone to come into Tarkov new and have maybe only seen some clips online, this is one of the most intimidating FPS games to try and get into, for both good and bad reasons. The level of complexity with many systems in the game can be seen as something to really dig in and learn over the course of your playtime. However, depending on who you are, it can also be seen as tedious and an unnecessary mess. Ammo charts, the healing system, how weapon modifications work, there are plenty of hours in just these systems alone to really sink your teeth into. And that doesn't even cover the many different in-raid aspects as well. Learning each of the maps, where their extractions are, how to fight AI scavs and bosses as well as other players. There are many layers to this game, both in and out of raids for new players to explore and potentially get invested in. Again, some will certainly see this as over the top and ridiculous, but I'd argue this is one of the largest reasons why Tarkov has withstood the test of time and become such an icon in the FPS genre. Even at its worst, it still beats many other games in the same genre. And while there have been a handful of other games and publishers with their own take on the extraction shooter genre, as it has been aptly named, Tarkov still stands as the pinnacle of how and why this genre can be so rewarding to play. If I may speak about myself personally for a moment, there is also the comfort the game brings, if that even makes sense. Again, I use the Souls games as an example here. Most people associate Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Elden Ring with stress, but for myself and some others out there, these games kinda do the exact opposite. They are comfort games. I play these to sit back and honestly relax. Even if I die 100 times, I don't really care. There is something melodic about going through a Souls game and knowing what you're supposed to do and hitting on those beats accordingly. You wouldn't normally use comfort and Tarkov in the same sentence. You don't associate that word and those feelings with the game because of what it's meant to be and represent. But think about it for a second. Once you spend enough time with the game, you use the weapons you're familiar with, you run the maps you enjoy, and yet every single raid will play out differently than the last. So while there is unfamiliarity with that, for some reason in my head that's comforting. That's probably why you will only ever see me play customs, to which I honestly do apologize. I just really love this map. I really should learn streets, especially with the expansion. Customs is great, you know? But that just reinforces my point that we enjoy what we know. And I know Tarkov, and I really know customs, so I stick with what I enjoy. Also, that map just has great PvP late game, so that's a huge contributing factor, so we can't forget about that. Time is also another contributing factor that goes into coming back to a game more than once. This doesn't have to just be Tarkov related. This goes for honestly any game you invest hundreds, if not thousands of hours into. Games like League of Legends, Destiny, Apex, active fighting games, they all have so much of your time dumped into them. Whether you enjoy it or are just going through the motions, these kinds of games, including Tarkov, are daily login kind of games, where you open it up almost every day if you're available to either play it or just see what's going on. And as someone who has played all of these, Tarkov is number one for games for myself with the most recorded amount of time I've put into it. For a while, For Honor was up there, because I love that game to death, but since having shifted over to quote-unquote maining Tarkov, and these hours are only on one account, I played on a different one for years before I got my own, and I racked up just as many hours as this account currently has. Now, to be fair, there have been tons of moments where this game is left open and I'm not actively in a raid, but still. So I've put my time into Tarkov and then some, which is crazy because there's people with even more hours than me. But again, it's kind of like a sunk cost fallacy where you keep putting more in because you have already so much invested. But unlike sunk cost, I actually enjoy what I'm doing and the time I put in, so it's not a bad thing at all. Tarkov is a game that I have kept coming back to for years now. I enjoy every element and mechanic that is in it enough to want to always improve and get better. Because I will certainly never be the best mathematically, I can always try and improve each time I load into a raid. And with the wipe on the horizon, it's just another opportunity to improve further. Looking at everything we talked about, it makes sense why I keep coming back. Despite its flaws, all the bugs, glitches, crashes, everything that goes wrong with this game sometimes, there isn't anything like it out there right now. Maybe one day we'll get a proper competitor to Tarkov, but until then, I'll stick with what I know. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Let me know in the comments why you keep coming back to Tarkov if you actually do so, and subscribe for more videos about games that keep us invested for years on end. I hope to see you in future ones.